Hi there, this is Susie, otherwise known as Susie Q Scraps, and today I'm going to show you my recipe for creating a digital scrapbook layout. I've had several readers on my blog share that they just don't know where to begin when starting their own layout from scratch, and we're curious what my workflow is. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you, just quickly to keep this video under. I won't be doing every single step. I'm just going to show you the basic outline of what I do. One thing to keep in mind when you're scrapbooking your layout is the tools that you have. Of course, you have your 12 by 12 canvas, and then you have your photographs, which I've already pulled in the 4 photographs I want to use for this layout right here. And then we have our kit or mini kit. So you've got all of your embellishments and your papers. If you're using a template, then of course you've got a template to help guide you in your layout design. And then you've got your journaling if you want to add that, and a title for your layout if you want to add that. So let's go ahead and start with our blank canvas. And the first thing I like to do is start with my pictures. I think the shape of my pictures and how I crop them can help, or at least for me, it helps me come up with the layout design, and I like to do that before I have any distractions from papers or embellishments. So I'm going to go ahead and drag my photos onto my canvas. If you're using Photoshop Elements 9 like me, you can just drag straight up from your photo bin. If not, then double click on your photo and then drag it down to the canvas below. So if you've got an earlier version, double click on the photo and drag down. And if you have Photoshop Elements 9, then you can choose to just drag that straight up to your canvas, like so. Now I have all 4 of my pictures, and so my first step, after I've got all of the photos that I want to use on my canvas, I like to crop those pictures, and I'll start with the photo that I like, that I want to use for my main focal point. So the way I crop is by creating a new layer below, which is Control, and then click on the little new layer icon. I fill it with whatever colors in my color swatch, which is Alt Backspace to fill, and then Control G to clip that photo to that layer. And then with the filled layer active, and I have my Move tool, I can start adjusting the size of that fill to effectively crop my photo. This way I have some more play with it, and so it's my preferred method for cropping pictures. And once I like it, I'm going to go with a rectangle look for this one because of the way his face and his finger form kind of a rectangle shape. Once I've got it the way I want it, I'll click on the photo layer and hit Control E to merge it. And then I'll just hide it. I'll worry about resizing it after I have the other pictures. The other pictures, I want to focus on his face. So I'm going to go with kind of a more square shape, zoomed in on his face. Not perfect, just something square-ish. So let me go ahead and do that for the other photos that we have. This one, he's taking up pretty much the entire photo with just his face. That's okay. And the last picture, again, it's Control and this little new layer icon for a new layer below. Alt Backspace to fill it, and then Control G on the picture layer to clip it below. And we'll just get kind of a square shape. And then I'll turn all my photos back on. Now, obviously, some of these square ones are too big. I'm going to make them smaller so I can see what I'm doing. I don't want this picture that big, but I'll kind of make it the size I want it and then take a look at what I have. Now, with a rectangle and 3 squares, I could line all these 3 up vertically, make them smaller, and sit them right here next to this vertical photo. I'm going to do more of a horizontal line and line up these pictures with each other. So we'll make the squares smaller, make the rectangles smaller. So I'm going to do 2 squares and then that rectangle and then a square, so the rectangle is kind of falling on this. If I divided my layout into thirds, it's kind of falling on that line. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just adjust it how you want. Again, for sake of time, I'm not going to recreate the layout exactly how I did it the first time, just to give you the basic idea of what I do. So now that I've got my pictures helping define how I want my layout design to look, I'll start working on the papers. So I'm going to go ahead and select my bottom layer so that when I pull in the papers, they're below my photos. And I'm going to come close these photo files I don't need anymore. And I'll go to my folder that has my mini kit, and I'm going to use two papers for this circle pattern and the checkered pattern. I'm going to drag them into my project bin. And we'll start with the circle paper and drag it down, and then the green paper and drag it down. And again, I'll just close these because I don't need them anymore. And I want the circle paper to show through some. So I'll go ahead and adjust my green paper that way. And then my photos, I don't want them overhanging. I want them to all be on the green paper. So I'll select all of them and make them smaller. And then I think I kind of want it towards the middle, but I can change that later if I want. So now I've got my papers. For me in my workflow, this is when I would edit my photos. So make this one lighter because it's too dark. I would add a white stroke around them like you can see in this layout. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through those steps here. But that's when I would do it. I like to adjust the color of my photos, the lighting of them, once I can see what the backgrounds are behind them. All right, the next step after I have my papers is I grab my embellishment tools. So I like to start with embellishing behind the photo. So I might grab a frame and some of these horizontal elements like the ribbon, this other ribbon, to pull behind string. I love string. Adding layers behind your photo helps give it some depth and dimension and can help set it off from the page. So let's just drag all these onto the layout, just so you can get a general idea of how my workflow goes. Everything behind, well, not everything. I do quite a bit of what I want behind first. Then I'll add some stuff on top, and then I'll kind of go back and forth between adding some more below, adding some more on top for what I think looks visually pleasing for my layout. So for like a frame, I'm going to make it smaller, and I'm maybe going to pop it over here. Then I might duplicate it and repeat it over on this side. And I want my frames right on top of the paper. Oops, not below the paper. And then, like my ribbon, I might want this one in the middle. And I want this stripy ribbon to go on top. And then also below. And then the string, I'll kind of rotate it. I want it on top of the ribbons like it is. Maybe make it a bit smaller. And then I'll duplicate it so that it's over here as well. Let me zoom in so you can see the other end of this string, and I really want it to look like it's one big long piece of string going from left to right. So I'm going to tuck an image that's on top of this photo but behind this photo. So let's close some of those files again, if it'll let me. Go grab like this little monster and a star. I'm going to use the star as kind of a background for the monster to sit on so that he's more defined. Let's drag him on. And he's obviously too big. So let's resize him and resize the star. So that's kind of how you do something that's kind of behind and above. You just adjust your layers so it's behind some layers on top of the others. And we'll make it just a little bit smaller still. Okay, then I would start adding some more elements on top. So if you can see in this layout, I've got this arrow on top. I've got kind of this swirly doing this similar above and behind idea. Another swirly that's behind this photo but coming up on top of here, same as this monster is. And the journaling strips. So let's just add that orange arrow in on top. So I'm going to go up to the top layer so that when I pull it in, it's right where I want it. We'll go grab the arrow, drag it onto my layer, and resize it. Like that will work. Once I have my elements how I want, everything on top, everything below, I'll decide what I want to do for the journaling. I often like to journal straight onto a piece of paper. And so a background like this that's one color works really well for that. But in this case, this mini kit came with these journal strips that I want to use. So we'll do those next. Load them in my program. So just drag them up, select them all, make them smaller, and kind of start placing them. Now I could place one up here and do a couple there. I chose to put it down here so that I could put my title up on the top. And that's how I usually do my workflow, is once I've got the embellishments and figure out where I want the journaling, then I can decide where I want to put the title. Now sometimes if I already have a title in mind, I'll peg where I want to put the title and then adjust the journaling accordingly. Putting the title up here helps balance out our layout. And in this case, instead of using an alpha to create my title, I'm going to use this little word bit. It says Silly Kid. Put it up here. So there's my title, and I would add my journaling to these strips, maybe add a few more. So let me flip back to my first layout. These buttons I added after I did my journaling to kind of attach the page. So it's not a perfect workflow. I don't do all of my embellishments and then my journaling and don't add any more embellishments after. I'll add some more behind and on top until it starts to look how I want it. But that's my basic workflow. Start with the pictures, crop them to whatever shape you want and allow the shapes of those pictures to help define how you want to lay out your page. Then add your papers, and then toss some embellishments behind, add some more on top, keep going back and forth, top and bottom, until it kind of looks the way you want. And then once you can get an overall look at how your layout is coming, it will help guide you to where you should put your journaling and your title. And that is how I scrapbook pretty much every time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at susieqscraps@gmail.com. Thanks.